Whispers in the Tundra. The wind tore across the Siberian tundra with a ferocity that seemed alive, a relentless howl that clawed at the skeletal remains of the abandoned Soviet base. The compound stood as a monument to neglect, its thick iron walls rusted into jagged scales, streaked with crimson-brown decay. They loomed like sentinels frozen in time, their edges sharp against the sickly yellow glow of a moon half obscured by scudding clouds. No official maps acknowledged this forsaken place, its existence lingered only in the margins of history, whispers traded among ex-KGB officers over vodka in dimly lit bars, or war stories recounted by grizzled veterans to wide-eyed grandchildren in hushed, fearful tones. Isaac Monroe had spent months chasing those whispers. An independent explorer and documentarian, he was no stranger to the desolate corners of the world, crumbling temples in Cambodia, forgotten mines in the Andes, but this was different. The rumors had sunk their hooks into him, an off-the-books Cold War experiment, a classified bunker rumored to house something far older than the Soviet Union itself. Some claimed it was a weapon, others a curse, an entity dredged up from the frozen earth, rooted in ancient Russian folklore, imprisoned beneath layers of concrete and steel. The old men he'd interviewed, their hands trembling as they spoke, called it Kashiai's shadow, a name that sent shivers down his spine despite the rational part of his mind dismissing it as superstition. He stood now at the edge of the base, his breath puffing into the frigid air, a thin scarf doing little to shield his face from the wind's bite. His pack weighed heavily on his shoulders, crammed with supplies, a flashlight, and the camera that had become his lifeline. The device was battered but reliable, its red recording light blinking like a heartbeat in the darkness. He adjusted its strap, fingers numb through his gloves, and panned it across the desolate scene, the collapsed guard towers, the barbed wire tangled like skeletal vines, the snowdrifts piling against walls that once promised invincibility. Isaac's obsession had begun with a single document, a tattered page from a declassified archive he'd bribed a clerk to retrieve in Moscow. The paper was brittle, stained with age, but its final entry had burned itself into his memory: "Do not open the chamber. If the seal is broken, we are all dead." No context, no explanation, just a warning scrawled in hasty Cyrillic, the ink smudged as if written in panic. He'd cross-referenced it with rumors from defectors and black market traders, piecing together coordinates that led him here, to this wasteland where the horizon swallowed all hope. The rational part of him screamed to turn back. He was alone, hundreds of miles from the nearest settlement, with no backup if the ice gave way or a storm buried him alive. But the pull of discovery, the promise of a story no one else could tell, propelled him forward. He took a step, then another, boots crunching through the crust of snow, the base's gaping entrance yawning before him like the mouth of some ancient beast. He should have turned back. The interior of the base swallowed Isaac whole, the wind's howl fading to a distant moan as he crossed the threshold. The air inside was thick with decay, a rancid stew of rust, mildew, and something faintly organic that clung to the back of his throat. His flashlight beam sliced through the gloom, illuminating a corridor strewn with debris, shattered crates, coils of frayed wire, a single boot lying abandoned as if its owner had vanished mid-stride. Peeling propaganda posters lined the walls, their edges curling like dead skin, the faded Cyrillic promising Soviet supremacy over all enemies, capitalism, nature, time itself. Time, it seemed, had won. Isaac moved cautiously, his boots echoing on the concrete floor, each step a reminder of his isolation. The cold seeped through his layers, a damp chill that settled into his bones. He'd prepared for this, thermals, a parka, gloves, but nothing could shield him from the oppressive weight of the place. His camera whirred softly, capturing the desolation, though he wondered who would ever see it. His documentaries had a small but loyal following online, enthusiasts who devoured tales of lost history, but this felt different. This wasn't just a ruin, it was a grave. Ahead, a steel door loomed, its surface pitted with rust but still imposing, a barrier between him and whatever lay beyond. The words, "Danger, do not enter," were stenciled across it in bold red, the paint chipped but legible. Isaac hesitated, his breath fogging in the beam of his flashlight. The warning echoed the log entry he'd found, a connection that tightened the knot in his stomach. He reached out, gloved fingers brushing the cold metal, and felt a faint vibration, something deep within the structure, a pulse he couldn't explain. A sudden noise broke the silence, metal scraping against stone, sharp and deliberate. Isaac whirled, his flashlight flickering as it swept the corridor. Shadows danced across the walls, twisting into shapes that seemed almost human before dissolving into nothingness. His heart thudded against his ribs, the sound loud in his ears. "Hello," he called, his voice hoarse, swallowed by the emptiness. No response, only the faint drip of water somewhere in the distance. He was alone. He had to be. Yet the hairs on his neck stood on end, a primal instinct warning him of unseen eyes. He forced himself to breathe, to focus. This was why he'd come, to uncover the truth, not to flee at the first sign of fear. Gripping the door's handle, he pushed with all his weight. It resisted, groaning under decades of neglect, then gave way with a screech that reverberated through the hall. Beyond lay a stairwell, its steps spiraling downward into darkness. Frost glistened on the metal railings, and the air grew colder, heavier, as if the earth itself exhaled a warning. Isaac descended, his flashlight revealing more than just Soviet engineering. Ancient symbols lined the walls, etched deep into the metal, their edges blackened as if scorched by fire. Wards of protection, he realized, recognizing patterns from his research into Slavic mythology. This wasn't just a military installation. It was a tomb, built to hold something far older than the regime that constructed it. The stairwell ended in a subterranean chamber, a cavernous space that swallowed the light of Isaac's flashlight. The air here was stagnant, thick with the scent of rust and something metallic, like blood long dry. A rusted containment pod dominated one end of the room, its cylindrical form towering over him, its glass viewport fractured into a spiderweb of cracks, broken from the inside. Thick cables snaked across the floor, their insulation peeling away to reveal corroded wires, lifeless and abandoned. Dim emergency lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly orange glow that flickered erratically, as if struggling to stay alive. Isaac's boots scraped against the concrete as he stepped forward, his camera panning the scene. The chamber was vast, its walls stretching into shadows his light couldn't pierce. More symbols adorned the metal, circles within circles, jagged runes that seemed to writhe under scrutiny. His breath quickened, these weren't Soviet designs. They predated the base, predated the Cold War, rooted in a time when men feared the dark for reasons beyond reason. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, simple and unadorned, its surface pitted with age. Atop it rested an egg. Not just any egg, this one was ancient, its shell blackened with time, veins of glowing red pulsing faintly beneath its surface. It was the size of a human head, smooth yet grotesque, radiating a terrible, unnatural heat that Isaac felt even from paces away. The air around it shimmered, and the scent of scorched earth filled his nostrils, sharp and acrid. His camera zoomed in, the lens whirring as it focused, though his hands trembled too much to hold it steady. He'd read about Kashii the immortal in folklore, tales of a deathless sorcerer whose soul was hidden in an egg, guarded by layers of protection. The stories varied, but they all agreed on one thing: the egg was his lifeline, his vulnerability. Isaac had dismissed it as myth, a metaphor twisted by time. Yet here it was, real and pulsing, a relic of something impossibly old trapped in a Soviet tomb. A whisper slithered through the darkness, low and insidious. "You have come far, traveler, but do you understand what you seek?" Isaac froze, his breath catching in his throat. The voice wasn't his imagination, it was real, tangible, curling around him like smoke. He swung his flashlight toward the sound, its beam trembling in his grip. The shadows shifted, but nothing emerged. His mind raced, torn between fear and the need to document. He whispered into the camera, voice shaking, "Did you hear that? There's something here." The egg pulsed brighter, its red veins flaring like a heartbeat. Isaac took a step closer, drawn by a compulsion he couldn't name. The heat intensified, prickling his skin even through his gloves. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a relic. It was alive. Isaac spun toward the corner of the chamber, his flashlight beam slicing through the dark. There, beneath the flickering emergency lights, stood a figure, tall and skeletal, clad in the tattered remnants of a Soviet officer's uniform. The fabric hung in shreds, stained with decades of rot, the insignia of rank barely discernible. The figure's skin stretched impossibly thin over hollowed cheekbones, translucent enough to reveal the faint outline of bone beneath. His eyes burned like embers, twin points of fire in the gloom, unblinking and merciless. His voice rasped like dead leaves scraping against stone, each word deliberate and heavy. "They thought they could contain me. They thought chains and steel could bind what is eternal." Isaac staggered backward, his boots slipping on the frost-slick floor. His mind screamed to flee, to abandon the camera and run, but his body refused to obey. Fear rooted him in place, a cold sweat breaking out beneath his layers. The figure, Kashii, it had to be, stepped forward, his movements eerily silent, boots leaving no mark on the frozen concrete. "They called me a weapon," Kashii continued, his head tilting slightly, as if studying Isaac. "They thought they could wield me. Scientists in their sterile coats, soldiers with their guns, they believed they could harness what they did not understand. But they forgot one thing." His lip curled into something resembling a grin, revealing teeth sharpened to points, blackened with age. "I am not theirs to control. I am death itself." The air grew colder, a bone-deep chill that seeped through Isaac's clothes and into his marrow. Ice crept up his boots, crackling as it spread, locking him in place. The shadows around Kashii lengthened, twisting into unnatural shapes, clawed hands, gaping maws, that clawed toward Isaac, only to dissolve as his flashlight swept over them. The egg pulsed in rhythm with the figure's words, its red glow bathing the chamber in a bloody hue. Isaac's mind reeled. He'd come seeking evidence of a Cold War experiment, a forgotten chapter of history to share with the world. Instead, he'd found a nightmare made flesh, a legend that defied logic. Kashii shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, yet here he stood, a relic of folklore bound to a Soviet prison, his presence suffocating. What are you?" Isaac stammered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the egg. He raised his camera, the red light blinking furiously, as if it too sensed the danger. Kashii's ember eyes narrowed. "I am what remains when empires fall. I am the shadow they feared, the death they could not kill. And you, little traveler, are a fool to come here." The figure took another step, and the chamber seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in as the cold tightened its grip. Isaac's breath came in shallow gasps, fogging before his face. He had to act, had to do something, but what? The legends flooded back, Kashiai's immortality, his soul tethered to the egg. If there was a way out, it lay in that pulsing relic. The room was a cage of ice and shadow, Kashiai's presence a weight that crushed Isaac's resolve. The egg pulsed brighter, its red veins flaring like a warning, its heat a stark contrast to the freezing air. Isaac's eyes darted to it, the pedestal only a few steps away, yet it felt like miles under Kashiai's gaze. The legends were clear: destroy the egg, destroy the immortal. It was his only chance. He lunged, boots slipping on the ice, his gloved hand outstretched. The second his fingers brushed the egg's surface, a scream erupted, a sound so inhuman it shook the chamber, cracking the concrete walls. The noise burrowed into his skull, a piercing wail that drowned out his own cry. Kashiai moved faster than thought, a blur of decayed uniform and skeletal limbs. His fingers closed around Isaac's throat, lifting him off the ground with effortless strength. The grip burned, a paradox of frostbite and fire that seared through Isaac's skin. Kashiai's face loomed close, his ember eyes boring into him, his voice a whisper that slithered into his ear. "You think you are the first?" Visions flooded Isaac's mind, unbidden and vivid, Soviet scientists in white coats, their faces twisted in terror as they approached the egg, hammers and drills in hand. Soldiers followed, rifles trembling, only to fall one by one, their bodies crumpling into husks, eyes vacant as their souls were devoured. The egg glowed in each scene, unyielding, its shell impervious to steel and fire. Decades of failure played out in seconds, a parade of the damned who'd tried and died. Isaac gasped, clawing at Kashiai's hand, but the grip was iron. His vision blurred, the chamber spinning as oxygen fled his lungs. The egg wasn't just a container, it was a trap, a lure for the desperate and the curious. He'd walked into it willingly. Kashiai leaned closer, his breath a rancid gust of rotting meat. "You cannot kill what does not die. Your tools, your courage, they mean nothing here." The words sank in, heavy with finality. Isaac's body slackened, his strength fading, but his mind clung to a flicker of hope. He'd come prepared, not with science or brute force, but with something older. His pack hung heavy at his side, the hammer within it a relic he'd found in a crumbling monastery near Novgorod. Its head was engraved with prayers in Old Church Slavonic, words against evil etched by hands long dead. He'd bought it from a monk who claimed it had banished demons in centuries past, a story Isaac had laughed off, until now. With a surge of desperation, he twisted, his free hand fumbling for the pack. Kashiai's grip tightened, a warning, but Isaac's fingers closed around the hammer's handle. He yanked it free, the weight solid in his grasp, and swung with all he had left. The hammer arced through the air, its engraved head glinting in the egg's red glow. Kashiai's eyes widened, a flicker of something, fear, crossing his skeletal face. Isaac's cry echoed as he brought it down, striking the egg dead center. The shell resisted for a heartbeat, then shattered with a sound like breaking glass amplified 1,000-fold. Shards flew outward, black and red, dissolving into ash before they hit the ground. Kashiai screamed, a wail that shook the chamber to its foundations. His body convulsed, the embers in his eyes flickering wildly, then dimming. His grip on Isaac's throat loosened, and Isaac fell, gasping, to the icy floor. The immortal staggered back, clawing at his chest as cracks spread across his skin, glowing red like the egg's veins. His form crumbled, piece by piece, into a pile of dust that scattered across the concrete, carried by an unseen wind. The shadows retreated, shrinking back into the corners, and the cold eased its grip on Isaac's body. Silence fell, heavy and absolute, broken only by his ragged breathing. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, the hammer still clutched in his hand. The pedestal stood empty, the egg's heat gone, leaving only a faint scorch mark where it had rested. His mind struggled to process what had happened. Kashii was dead, truly dead, if the legends held. The hammer had worked where bullets and bombs had failed, its ancient power breaking a curse that science couldn't touch. Isaac laughed, a weak, shaky sound that echoed in the emptiness. He'd done it. He'd survived. But the victory felt hollow. The chamber's lights flickered once, a dying gasp, then plunged him into darkness. His flashlight lay across the room, its beam faint and faltering. The base groaned, a deep, structural moan that vibrated through the floor. Cracks spiderwebbed up the walls, dust raining down as the ceiling buckled. The destruction of the egg hadn't just killed Kashii, it had destabilized whatever held this place together. Isaac scrambled to his feet, adrenaline surging anew. His camera lay nearby, its red light still blinking, a testament to its durability. He grabbed it, slinging it over his shoulder, and snatched his flashlight. The beam wavered but held as he stumbled toward the stairwell. Debris crashed behind him, a slab of concrete narrowly missing his head. The base was collapsing, burying its secrets, and nearly him, beneath the tundra. Isaac raced up the stairwell, his boots pounding against the metal steps. The air grew thick with dust, choking him as he climbed, the flashlight beam cutting a narrow path through the haze. The walls shuddered, groaning like a wounded animal, and the symbols etched into them glowed faintly before crumbling away. Behind him, the chamber collapsed in a roar of concrete and steel, the sound chasing him like a predator. He reached the corridor, lungs burning, and sprinted toward the entrance. The propaganda posters fluttered as the structure shook, some tearing free to drift like ghosts in his wake. A beam fell ahead, blocking half the path, and he vaulted over it, his pack snagging briefly before he wrenched it free. The steel door he'd entered through hung ajar, its hinges warped, and beyond it, the night sky beckoned, a sliver of freedom in the chaos. The ground tilted beneath him, a final tremor as the base gave way. Isaac dove through the doorway, landing hard in the snow outside. The frigid air hit him like a slap, clearing the dust from his lungs as he crawled away from the entrance. Behind him, the compound imploded, a slow, deliberate collapse that swallowed walls and towers into a cloud of white powder. The earth rumbled, then stilled, leaving only a crater where the base had stood. Isaac rolled onto his back, staring at the moon through the drifting snowflakes. His chest heaved, each breath a victory over the nightmare he'd escaped. His camera lay beside him, its lens coated in frost but still recording, the red light a steady pulse. He picked it up, brushing it clean, and checked the footage, blurry but intact, a record of Kashii, the egg, the collapse. Evidence of the impossible. He stood, legs trembling, and shouldered his pack. The tundra stretched endless around him, a sea of white under the moon's glow. His compass was gone, lost in the chaos, but he knew the general direction of the nearest outpost, a grueling trek through the cold. He'd make it. He had to. The world needed to know what he'd found, what he'd destroyed. Isaac trudged through the tundra, the wind a constant howl in his ears. His boots sank into the snow with each step, the effort draining what little strength remained. The hammer hung heavy in his pack, a relic of his triumph, though its weight felt like a burden now. The camera bounced against his chest, its footage a lifeline to sanity, a proof that he hadn't imagined the horror beneath the ice. The collapse replayed in his mind, Kashiai's scream, the egg shattering, the base crumbling. He'd survived where others hadn't, a lone witness to a secret the Soviets had buried. His documentaries had always been about uncovering the past, lost cities, forgotten wars, but this was bigger. This was a collision of history and myth, a tale that could rewrite what people believed about the Cold War, about the world itself. Hours passed, the moon dipping toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow. Exhaustion gnawed at him, his body begging for rest, but he pushed on. The outpost was out there, a speck of civilization in the wilderness. He'd tell the world, upload the footage, write the story, let the evidence speak. Skeptics would scoff, but the camera didn't lie. The wind shifted, carrying a faint sound, a whisper, low and indistinct. Isaac stopped, head cocked, straining to hear. It came again, a murmur on the edge of perception, like voices carried from a great distance. He turned, flashlight sweeping the tundra, but saw only snow and shadow. Fatigue, he muttered, shaking his head. Just the wind. Yet the feeling lingered, a prickling at the base of his skull. Kashiai was gone, dust on the chamber floor, his essence shattered with the egg. The legend said he couldn't return without it. Still, Isaac couldn't shake the sense of being watched. Of something lurking just beyond the light's reach. He resumed his trek, the whispers fading into the wind's howl. The tundra was vast, unforgiving, but he'd faced worse and lived. Kashiai was dead, the base erased. Whatever lingered was a trick of the mind, a shadow of fear he'd leave behind with the snow. Or so he told himself.